Back in the factories, something strange happens every time defective Kit Kats roll off the line. Instead of being tossed out, they're ground into paste and fed right back into the product. It sounds almost unreal, but this step has shaped what Kit Kats taste like for decades. To understand why, we'll follow the bar's journey, from wafer to enrobing, and uncover how mistakes literally enrich the final recipe. It's a story where chocolate engineering, tradition, and a secret twist come together to explain one of the world's most popular snacks. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. What happens to millions of Kit Kat bars each year that don't look right? Every chocolate bar rolling off the line gets inspected before it ever reaches store shelves. Any tiny flaw, like a bubble in the coating, a wafer sitting out of place, or a surface that lacks shine, means the bar is rejected. These imperfections aren't dangerous or harmful, but they don't fit the picture-perfect standard expected when you open the wrapper. For companies producing at massive scale, these checks happen every second, meaning thousands of bars can be screened in just a few minutes. The strict process is designed to keep quality consistent, but it also creates an interesting challenge. Most people assume these mistakes get tossed out. It makes sense at first glance. If a chocolate bar is crooked or cracked, it doesn't belong on a store shelf, so we might imagine huge piles of wasted bars filling up dumpsters. When you think about the volume produced in a single day, literally tons of chocolate, that idea begins to sound like a serious problem. And from a global perspective, food producers already contribute heavily to waste streams. Research on food manufacturing shows that perfectly edible products often never reach the consumer because of small visual defects, even though there's nothing unsafe about them. If Kit Kat followed that same route, the piles of lost chocolate would be enormous. Factories, of course, can't afford that kind of waste, and neither can the planet. The candy industry faces the same pressure as any other type of food production. Find ways to cut back on wasted material. Instead of treating imperfect bars as garbage, Kit Kat factories found a more clever solution. The answer is recycling, not in a bin outside, but inside the recipe itself. Every bar that fails inspection doesn't get destroyed. It returns to the production loop. The bad bars are collected, placed into machines, and crushed back into a powdery mix. Think of it as ingredients going in reverse. The chocolate coating, the wafer layer, and even the cream filling get blended back down until they form a uniform ground mixture. That recycled material doesn't go back to the outside of the bar. Instead, it becomes the filling layer you taste between the wafers. In other words, rejected Kit Kats don't disappear. They become part of new Kit Kats. This practice has been running quietly for decades, shaping the flavor that people recognize without even realizing it. What many assume is a creamy chocolate paste is actually filled with traces of yesterday's mistakes. Nestlé's upcycling method keeps waste low while turning flaws into something useful. The real secret inside every Kit Kat isn't just wafer and chocolate. It's imperfection reborn. So how does a mix of crushed bars transform into the smooth cream between those delicate wafer sheets? That next step in the process is even more unusual. If you snap open a Kit Kat, what exactly makes up that lighter, creamy filling hiding inside? At first glance, it looks like a simple chocolate paste pressed between wafers, but candy makers know it by another name: the chalk layer. It isn't a separate ingredient listed on a recipe card, and that has led to plenty of confusion about what it actually is. Some people point to a cocoa-based paste that holds everything together, while others insist it is built directly from rejected Kit Kats that are crushed down and mixed back in. The mystery has gone on for years, and even today adds a certain intrigue to the bar's design. The truth is in the texture. Break a piece in half, and you'll notice the filling never shines like the outer shell does. Instead, it appears a little lighter in shade, softer, and less smooth. That difference tells you it isn't identical to the outside coating. The filling carries a crumbly quality that contrasts with the clean crunch of the wafer layers, and it delivers a taste that feels familiar yet different at the same time. People argue about whether that contrast comes from carefully processed chocolate paste or whether it comes from the ground pieces of bars that didn't make the cut. Adding to the mix, Kit Kat factories don't all use identical techniques across the world. Historical accounts suggest that production sites have experimented with slightly different formulas for local markets, so the recipe may not be handled exactly the same everywhere. That variation fuels the ongoing debate about whether the center is true paste or a reworked mixture. For viewers, this means the filling has remained part of the brand's lore rather than a plain industrial detail. If you look at photos comparing a spoon of pure paste to a sample of crushed and reprocessed bar blend, the small differences in grain and consistency become clear. That visual evidence often convinces people that the second explanation is closer to reality. The process doesn't stop with crushing. Once the rejected bars are broken down, machines grind them to a very fine consistency before smoothing the particles into a pliable mix. This step removes any rough edges or large pieces and transforms uneven scraps back into something uniform. That refined mixture is then layered between fresh wafers, giving it the slightly crumbly but creamy profile unique to Kit Kat. So while it begins as broken product, careful grinding and smoothing techniques are what allow it to come together as a recognizable filling. Why would a company allow so much mystery to linger? Part of it comes down to brand tradition. A little uncertainty about how the chalk layer is made adds to its mythology. It also comes from corporate discretion, since factories rarely publish the tiny details of their systems. What's clear, though, is that the reworked Kit Kats are indeed reused, creating a cycle where every finished bar contains traces of those imperfect ones that quietly fed back into the line. With that puzzle solved, the next question is even bigger. How do machines keep track of so many potential flaws without ever letting defective bars slip past? How can a factory producing millions of bars every day spot a defect hidden inside a chocolate shell? At first glance, the answer seems impossible. Each bar is wrapped in the same smooth layer of milk chocolate with no sign of what might be off inside. That's where automated vision systems step in. Instead of human eyes standing along the line, cameras and sensors do the work. They sit above and beside the conveyor belts, capturing each bar as it passes at a speed too fast for anyone to track by hand. These systems don't just look at one detail. They scan for shape, size, and symmetry. If a wafer sits too high or a coating layer looks uneven, the cameras pick it up. At the same time, sensors weigh each bar so the system knows whether the filling matches the proper balance. A bar could look perfect from the outside, but if it falls short in weight by just a few grams, the machine tags it instantly. By checking multiple data points, everything from surface shine to structural density, the factory makes sure no bar slips through the cracks. Here's the real challenge. A machine needs to catch flaws so tiny a shopper would never notice them. Human inspectors can't detect microscopic cracks or air pockets buried under the chocolate shell. Yet those flaws could affect the eating experience. That's why some sites use specialized X-ray detectors alongside cameras. The X-rays scan through the chocolate, mapping the interior layers in real time. If a wafer isn't perfectly aligned or the filling is uneven, the system signals for that bar to be taken off the line. Now picture this. A bar travels down the belt, fully coated, glossy, and without a dent. To you, it appears flawless, but in less than a second, a sensor flags it. The reason? Its interior wafer shifted by just enough to alter the snap you expect when breaking it. Within moments, a small mechanical arm pushes the bar gently onto a separate track, sending it away from the main flow. That single action happens thousands of times an hour. And it doesn't slow down the pace of production. The system can scan and measure at speeds far beyond human capacity, keeping efficiency high while holding quality firm. At this point, it's natural to wonder what happens to those rejected bars. Are they wasted? The surprising answer is no. Instead of heading to disposal, they return to the recycling process. The flagged bars are crushed, ground, and smoothed into the mixture that eventually becomes the creamy filling between wafers. The very same technology that removes them from circulation is what guarantees they come back stronger, feeding into the signature taste of the product. Imperfection doesn't vanish. It transforms into consistency. Every time you bite into a Kit Kat, you taste more than chocolate and wafer. Hidden inside are recycled pieces of bars that didn't pass inspection, turned into the creamy layer that keeps flavor and texture consistent. This process reduces waste and helps explain why Kit Kat's taste has stayed the same for decades. It's a reminder that efficiency isn't only about speed or volume, but about using everything in a smart way. Kit Kat also focuses on recyclable packaging and sustainable cocoa, showing how everyday snacks can reflect bigger changes. What looks like a flaw actually defines an icon.